different than they are now. All right? Nowadays, these little bands, they get together, bang around in their mom's garage for a few weeks, go into their bedroom with their little laptop computers, and they make a record. They put it out. Right? Then they have a record out. You know, it takes about 3 weeks from the time you decide to be a band to the time you have a record out. But it wasn't like that back in the olden days, my dear friends. Back in the olden times, things were very, very different. In those days, if you were going to get an album out, it was a lot of work, and you had to be completely committed to this process. Okay? You had to do a bunch of gigs, you had to get ready, you know, you had to write a bunch of songs, and you worked real hard to save up your money, because it cost a lot of money to make these albums back in those days. So, anyway, what you would do is you'd save up your money by doing these shows, these gigs, right? And then you would go to this place that in those days was called a recording studio, okay? A recording studio like Jeff Bezos used to have. Anyway, you go in there, and in these recording studios was these gigantic things called tape machines, okay? And these tape machines, they're not like Scotch tape, no, they were tape machines. They had these wide reels of tape that spun around in circles between each other, and as they spun over these electronic sort of head things, it would record what the musicians were playing in those days, okay? We were musicians back in those days, alright? Now, us musicians, then, we would do it, in this recording studio, we'd record these things. Then when we were done recording, it would take a long time usually. We would take our tapes, these big, big reels of tape, to a place that was called a mastering plant, okay? Now, this mastering plant was a really cool place. This guy that ran this mastering plant was really smart, man. You know, and he was really into mastering these records. It'd take all day to master a record, right? And you would argue, you'd have these big, heavy arguments between everybody in the room about, should we put 1/2 of 1 second between these two songs, or should we put 4/10 of 1 second between these two songs? We would get in big, knockdown, drag-out arguments about these processes, right? That's how much we cared about music back in the olden days. Now, after we got it mastered, if you were still together and you were still a band, okay, you took their tapes and this acetate that you got it mastering to a place that was in those days called, and we don't have these things in the United States anymore, they were called factories, okay? And they take these factories, they would take your tapes and they would have hundreds and hundreds of spinning spindles with these round pieces of vinyl plastic on these spindles spinning around, and into these spindles, as God is my witness, they would cut grooves into these round pieces of vinyl plastic, okay? You don't believe me? This really happened, I swear honestly, it's happened, okay? You don't believe me? Okay, then, when you have these grooves in this round piece of vinyl plastic, you can take this round piece of vinyl plastic called what? Album! You take this album, you take it home to your turntable, okay? You take it home to your turntable with this spinning machine, you take this needle arm thing on it, and you put it on your spinning round piece of vinyl plastic. Then you take your big old stereo receiver, and this thing was big. It wasn't like these little iPods and all these things. This thing was gigantic. It took a damn vice grips just to turn up the volume knob on these things. You turn that thing up to 9, you rattle the whole neighborhood, and as God is my witness, it might have been this song right here. This is called Harvest Moon. Sicknesses now become a star.